I'd like to call to order the Beaufort County Stormwater Management Utility Board. The first order of business will be the approval of today's agenda. Do I have a second? Somebody make a motion?
Make a motion to approve today's agenda.
Second. Second's made. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Moving right along to the approval of the minutes of August 11th.
We need to adjust,
Well, I think we need to amend that, number one, that unfortunately Mrs. Howard was not here. It shows her as present in the minutes. Likewise, the head of, I apologize for not remembering his name, but the good doctor from the microbiology lab was not present also. And it shows he as present.
He was in the audience.
He came late.
Oh, he
and
came
was
late?
in the audience, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we'll just make the adjustment of Mrs. Howard on the minutes. Any other additions or corrections? Other than the spelling of my last name, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
motion to approve the minutes.
All those, second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. The minutes are approved as corrected. Next on the list is introductions, and we'll start from the left.
Patrick Mitchell representing Ladies Island.
I'm Mark Feinberg, and I represent unincorporated District 9 in Defusky Island.
James Clark, representing unincorporated Port Royal.
Brian Watkins, all of Beaufort County at large.
Jeff Metzinger, Town of Hilton Head Island, ex officio.
Alice Howard, District 4, County Council.
Hilton Side, Beaufort County Public Works.
Katie Herrera, Beaver County Stormwater.
Joanna Zorin, Beaufort County Stormwater.
Great. Well, welcome, everyone, especially Mrs. Howard and Mr. Desai. At this time, if there is any public comment, there being no public to comment, we'll move on to reports. Utility update to start by Mrs. Herrera.
Good afternoon. For the Beaver County Stormwater Utility update, where I wanted to inform you all that we continue to work on implementing the SoLoCo standards across the municipalities who have indicated they would be interested in participating. We are currently trying to schedule a meeting with the City of Beaufort staff to include their their board members, bring their council people up to speed on what our standards are, and then still work closely with their development community and their public works director. For special presentations, we might need to amend this. I did have Dr. Monty commit to participating for the November 10th meeting. If in fact we can adjust the schedule for our next meeting to December, I'll work with him to try and get him on that agenda as well. Do you have the date? We can find out the date later for that. December 10th December meeting, what the proposed date would be.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
It would be the 14th.
The 14th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wednesday, the 15th.
The 15th, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll work on that.
Under new business, we'll circle back to that.
Sure. The Cypress Wetlands presentation, we had originally had that scheduled in the summer. We are looking to reschedule that for early winter of next year, just so we have that update that we were promised to get out of the town of Port Royal. One of the other special presentations we have lined up for early winter is going to be from our consultant, Wolpert. They'll be going over the results of the audit they're currently doing on our MS4 program. We are hosting those sessions this week. So all of yesterday, the beginning half of today, and then tomorrow, we're in session with Wolpert going over the program audit. So we'll be having them present those results at the end, in early winter of next year. The report is scheduled to be delivered in December of this year.
I might make a note that we might want to suggest, if it's possible, to put them earliest on the calendar. Looking through your reports, it looks like they've done a lot of work in your department. And I think at the beginning of the year, it would be good to have the update right away. If we could get that in January and then move to
Cypress
later
Wetlands out.
for the field trip.
Sure, that works. Yep, they're amenable to both dates. So looking forward to have them present on not only the work that we continue to do with them, but the results of our MS4 program audit. We also have them taking a look at our capital improvement project plan and our stormwater utility as a whole. So.
Are they going to be reporting on all three, or the other two are ongoing?
They'll be reporting on all three.
That'd be great.
Yeah. I don't know that we'll have the finalized recommendations for how to move forward for the capital improvement plan and the utility, but we'll certainly have enough information to provide at that time. The MS4 report audit will definitely be done by December. The other two are just things we had requested they also take a look at as well. So for our delinquent accounts, the only update that I can provide at this time for Gentry Lock is that we are keeping the PO for the attorneys open. And we have been given no further guidance on that, but just to keep you aware. Certainly when the time comes for our legal department to present to you on how we're going to be proceeding as the county, we'll have them scheduled to participate. And then last but not least, we have received the annual financial reports from the town of Hilton Head and the town of Bluffton. So moving on to our monitoring update. Mr. Hamp Simpkins just walked in. Hamp, would you like to discuss the monitoring report?
Sorry?
We've just come to the part in our presentation about the monitoring report. The lab provided a report, but if you had anything additional you wanted to say. Okay. Perfect. We do still continue to work very closely with the lab on completing all of our monitoring plan components.
I would just ask a question of the gentleman. Dr. Warren is still in charge of the laboratory?
Oh, he asked if Dr. Warren was still in charge of the lab.
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
Yep. For our Stormwater Implementation Committee, the county staff provided fiscal year 21 reports to all of our municipalities on September 1st. And from that report, we had the request of the municipalities to also have the CWI reports completed from FY18 until FY20. And those were presented to each of our committee members as of October 5th. And we'll be meeting soon to discuss the findings of what that fiscal report looked like. For our stormwater related projects, we still continue to meet monthly on all of the easements and level of service and extent of service documents that we have for county staff as well as the residents of our community. For our flyover bridge repair project for US 278, construction has been completed. We are just waiting on the final invoice and closeout from our contractor, and we'll have that project considered completed. I know last presentation, we presented kind of pictures of before and after of what they had done on site. They did a great job very quickly to get that project completed. So at this time, we're just waiting on the final invoice, and so we can wrap the project up. For the Shell Point community, right now we are working very diligently, both myself, but also kind of spearheading the campaign, Julianna, on obtaining funding for the work to be done in the Shell Point community. What we have been advised by South Carolina Emergency Management Division is to apply for as many grants as we can, and then in hopes that one of those will kind of stick and land for us. So we are applying for the BRIC grant, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. We are applying for the Hazard Mitigation grant, Hazard Mitigation Plan grant. We are applying for ARPA.
Is this all for Shell Point? Is this
Yes.
hoping one will stick?
Yes. Some of these are at the federal level. BRIC is FEMA, so it's very comprehensive grant application. And then the others are at the state level. So again, I think getting funds from the state will be a lot easier from the federal government, but we're gonna try anyways. We are looking to schedule our next task force meeting on the week of October 25th. There are a lot of moving parts as we have gotten into these grants, and there's only so much that our staff can do. So we're looking to coordinate with our task force members as well to see what assistance they can provide, and to update them on where we're at. Julianna has been very proactive about getting these grant applications ahead of time to see what we would need to be providing to the government. And even being as diligent as she has been, there's a lot of things that we just were not expecting. So we're planning on giving an update to the task force members at that time.
Who makes up the task force, man?
The task force is myself, Julianna, Mr. Clark, Van Willis, Noah Krebs, Alice Howard, Shannon Erickson participates.
John,
Rather large
John
group.
Cross, and Robert Wilkins.
Yep,
Large
John
group.
and Robert are members of the Shell Point community. Residents, excuse me.
So, well, Jim is.
Mhm, yeah.
Oh, and Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Penn Sanders from the DOT. Yep.
Thank you.
So kind of
It's a rather large group.
we do, and I think we have a very comprehensive group from those represented. We have, people at the state level that can help push for our project to get funding, certainly at the local level, and then having all of the jurisdictional representatives as well. Town of Port Royal, the DOT has infrastructure within that community, and then certainly the county as well. So I think we have all of the important people at the right table.
Sounds great. Thank you.
You're welcome. For the Academy Park Pond, Beaufort County Legal is still handling obtaining this easement. As a part of new business, we'll be voting on this project to come into the county system, and I'll give a more comprehensive update during that time. The Factory Creek Detention Basin number 2, this is also in the hands of Beaufort County Legal in order to obtain the easements to the pond that was built that discharges out to Rock Springs Creek. For the Graves Pepper Hall property, we continue to work with their engineers and their legal team in order to have comprehensive construction plans. There are still projects that are under review, but we are having more of those projects be approved and to begin starting work soon. The one that we are currently revisiting is the apartment complex in that property. Roads and infrastructure is approved, and so are the townhomes within that community. And the property owners do continue construction on the regional BMP pond that's going to be on the county park at the northwestern corner of the property. They are also currently retrofitting their outfall structures for one of the wetland finger systems. The outfall structures were really not functioning properly, and in order to retain that water, instead of being tidally inundated at every cycle, those will be retrofitted to be functioning properly. So they are working on that now. At this time, I do not have any update for the Whitehall property. I do know that that project has begun going to construction for the portion that is on the city property. And then last but not least, for the Ladies Island plan, we have, and the no-fill ordinance, that is kind of back at the table with our community development team after they received some feedback from an external organization. So, for professional contracts, for Salt Creek and Shanklin Road, we have completed the appraisals and are requesting guidance from Upper County Administration to proceed with entering into negotiations on the prices for those property owners that have agreed to participate. And for the Brewer Memorial Park, we are just waiting to issue the notice to proceed. This project has been waiting for the budget confirmation to be finalized and approved in Munis to go ahead and issue that notice. And once that's complete, we do anticipate construction occurring shortly after. For the Evergreen 319 project, we have extended their contract until early 2022. This is due to quite a few reasons experienced by the contractor, but we are still present weekly to ensure that progress is ongoing. Because we asked for an extension on our permit with them, we have also requested an extension on the DHEC permit, or I'm sorry, the DHEC grant that we have, and we are still waiting to hear back from DHEC staff in the 319 program on whether that was approved. We did apply in early September, and typically it's about a 2-month turnaround time. So we're hoping to hear back from them soon. For Woolpert, we've kind of just given a brief overview, but I think it would be important for y'all to know just how much work and what we've earmarked for them to do on behalf of our department. So we have quite a few scopes that are currently running, and then we have scopes that are already sort of lining up to get started on. So the first one is for general services. This is kind of a catch-all for the department. We recently had a request to have an analysis done on our infrastructure, how we treat, impervious area and how we treat that on single-family residential homes. They just did a quick analysis and provided us with a memo. This would go under the general services scope. If they have to provide guidance on any legal matters, that'll go under the general scope. So it's a catch-all for them, and we've allotted $15,000.
Excuse me, I'm just curious, is this so that for the county to have an impervious standard for single-family homes that they don't currently have?
No, we have an impervious standard for single-family homes, and this was questioned by the community development team. And so for due diligence purposes, we had them determine whether or not the way we're currently treating gravel driveways and compacted driveways as impervious We had them run an analysis on what the true curve number is for imperviousness on these homes. And what they determined is that our standards are in line with the majority of the state in how we treat gravel driveways and parking areas as impervious for single-family homes. So that memo was then provided to the Community Development Department saying, what we're doing is in line with what we've been doing is appropriate. Certainly if they have questions, they can reach out to me, but we'll continue moving forward. They did not think that it was appropriate to have gravelled driveways be considered impervious. But due to compaction over time and lack of maintenance, as you would see on more of a commercial site, we're keeping our focus where it has always been. So that's kind of just an example.
Speaking for the previous members of this board, they probably love the fact that we're being more strict than less strict.
Sure. And that's all. We're not trying to be strict for strict's sake. We're trying to make it be the most appropriate for the goals of our program, and we determine that it's appropriate for us to be doing what we're doing. So, which was nice to hear. Scope number 2, this was set up for $30,000. This was completed in early spring of this year. This was made up of 2 components. One, to train our internal staff on how to do construction inspections, plan reviews, anything related to the update from the SoLoCo manual. There was an internal training for staff members that included not only other departments, but our inspectors and plan reviewers as well. And then the second component of that was to host a training for the developers in our community that have had a say-so since we began working on this manual, but here's the manual finalized. These are the major changes and updates from how we used to proceed under the Beaufort County BMP manual. So that was completed in early spring of this year. Scope number 3, this is what I was alluding to earlier. We are having the Wolpert staff audit our program as if they were from a state or federal agency to make sure that we're in compliance with all aspects of our MS4 permit. So currently we are working through, today's day 2. They'll have meetings till just after 4 today, and then we'll wrap up with some in the field inspections tomorrow, midday. So we've allocated $105,000 for this effort. Again, included in the audit, we're also having them take a look at our capital improvement project plan and our stormwater utility. So. Scope number 4, we have allocated $29,900 to. This is for our tax run and utility assistance. We have just completed the tax year 21 tax run, which was spearheaded by our business manager, Ms. Carolyn Wallace. That wrapped up on time. There are very minimal amendments that needed to be made coming out of the assessor and auditor's office, which I'm very proud of our program and department for helping push high quality data for the tax run. And in the event we needed assistance because we had too much to do, we asked Wolpert to be on standby to help assist during that time. The other component of this scope is to QA and QC some of the older data that we have, things that maybe haven't been looked at since 2015, just because there haven't been any upgrades or classification changes. We want to make sure we're capturing all the impervious area in the county or removing impervious area as it relates to amendments. So we're looking to have the QA/QC portion begin in early winter of next year.
Question real quick before you go forward. Scope 3 on the 105,000, is that also a yearly thing or is that every 5 years? on scope 3?
This is just a one-time thing.
Okay. What, was there anything that required us to do that?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But we'd rather be prepared when the state and feds do come knocking than, oops, you know, we're not as prepared as we thought we were.
Take it,
So,
we still haven't heard back from your report.
They're currently doing it.
oh, the annual report? No, we never get feedback on that.
We're going to get feedback on the scope number 3, correct?
Oh, absolutely. They're gonna have a finalized report for that in December. So in
And
just a
that's
month.
based on what standards?
The state MS4 requirements.
Okay.
For
Is there any other county in South Carolina that's actually doing this audit to stay compliant with the state?
There are others that do engage services such as Woolport's providing for us to make sure,
I would ask our
We,
colleague from Hilton Head,
the town of Hilton Head has considered it, but we have not pulled the trigger on assistance with that. But we had the live version last year, along with
Yeah.
Bluffton, when the state came and audited our program.
I was just a little alarmed at the price of $105,000 for an audit. And did we put a bid out for that audit? And was there 3 other companies that were able to do that audit at a decreased price?
we did not put this out for bid because they are on call. They're an on-call consultant and they have a budgeted amount every year to
Okay.
do services for our department. So this fell in line with the budget of that.
Okay.
Yeah. You had a second question?
No, I was just alarmed at that $105,000 for an audit that,
They're taking a very deep dive. This audit has been going on since early May,
okay.
where I had to provide pretty much the
Every facet
documentation
of
of
what
the
you do.
whole program. And then they have to take the time to review that information. And so right now, they've done their review. Next, we were having this series of interviews to see if there's any other information that they can extract from us as far as where we're at meeting our compliance requirements. And then after the interviews, they'll be going into report writing mode.
Okay.
So it is very comprehensive what they're doing.
So you say that there's interviews. Has there been other, like, back and forth once you gave them all the information? Was there a lot of questions and stuff from them all?
No, there were a
Not
few
really.
items
Few
that,
items that they requested or asked about.
they gave me a series of things I needed to provide, and then after their review of what was provided, I think they only came back and asked me about 2 different things.
Yeah.
So everything had been provided other than 2 documents. So, which we are still working on locating. They're there, I just have to find them. So, scope number 5, we had initiated conversations with Woolpert to do a drainage study for the Buckwalter Parkway and the Bluffton Parkway. In order to get this scope done, we also needed to have the town of Bluffton on board. And in conversations with the town of Bluffton staff, as well as internal staff, we determined that this scope wasn't necessary to move forward on based on how we're both managing our programs. So that was,
Would that have would that study have fallen on Bluffton to do that? To budget in their own budget for that study?
we did request that they participate in funding. We were not planning on allocating much funds to this,
Okay.
but, and Bluffton was willing to participate, but in conversations, like I said, with how they manage their development and growth and how we manage development and growth, we kind of determined it wouldn't be worth getting a study done, so. Scope number 6, this is for a property off of Middle Road on Ladies Island. We have a location with known flooding issues, and there is a property currently for sale in kind of in the middle of this known flooding area that we wanted to find out if there was some sort of small BMP that the county could put on this property, purchase the property and put on this property to help alleviate some of those issues. Through their very thorough study, they determined that we really weren't going to get as much bang for our buck in putting a BMP in. The only time where we would see a real benefit for flooding would be at the 100-year storm level. So everything 2, 10, 25, and 50, we're going to see much help at all.
I just have a question.
Sure.
It's written here that continuously flooded property, so it's flooding now?
Right now, I couldn't say so, but
Well, I
after,
don't mean today, but I mean, we're not waiting for 2050. If you read this, it says continuously flooded property, meaning right now we're experiencing flooding on an ongoing basis there? Is that, I guess, the appropriate way to state that?
yes, it's essentially the bottom of a bowl.
Now, is this similar to the problem we have in Alljoy where it's tidal and not stormwater related?
It is not tidal,
It is not tidal.
no.
Okay.
This is-
I'm just curious. So we still have to, I assume that you all still have to figure out how we can prevent the flooding.
In
Even if creating a BMP on this central property is not the answer.
Yes, so this was just a small puzzle piece to plug into a larger drainage study, which is, I think,
Is that number
scope
7?
number 7.
Okay.
Yes,
So they're linked.
yes.
Okay.
And any answer that we got out of scope number 6 for Turtle Lane was still going to be an answer, whether it's the one we wanted to hear or not. And what their determination was is they would encourage Beaufort County to take action in some capacity to ensure that no development would occur on that site, which is only going to increase the issues
So
for
it's gonna
that.
exacerbate the flooding, not
Right.
alleviate it.
Yes, so now we have to move forward with getting approval to potentially purchase or rezone that property.
That's the bottom of the bowl, then it's the development around that that adds to the problem.
Yes,
So that's the part that needs to be attended to.
sure. I don't disagree. We have expressed to the zoning department that should permits for that property, the properties that border the kind of the bowl are looked at specifically for what their increase in flooding issues could happen. And we've been successful thus far in one of the properties that has gone to development. We've thoroughly reviewed their drainage plan and have determined that based on the amount of impervious area versus how they're going to manage their on-site runoff versus how large their property actually is in comparison, that there wouldn't be any negative impacts downstream. So, but again, this little study was done in the capacity to make sure it plugged into this larger Ladies Island drainage plan. That property may be valuable for this larger study. Doing it and that's just focusing on that one area wasn't enough, but we do feel that it would be important as part of our broader study for Northern Ladies Island, which includes the neighborhood of Royal Pines, a few properties along Middle Road, and then some off of Sam's Point. So again, that's one of the scopes that we have, scope number 7. We are still reviewing their proposal, but preliminary information from our consultants suggests that a study of what we're trying to get done is going to cost between $150,000 and $300,000. It's important though, as the price increases, so does the quality of the model that they create. So the more they can get into the field and do a lot of verification, it's a lot more effort, but we get a much better model out of it. So
I would ask only one question, that $150,000 to $300,000, do you have that earmarked in your budget?
yes.
Okay. So
We have funded them with a holistic number, and so we can kind of piecemeal as needed out of that. The scopes are separate we just do that for tracking purposes. Yeah, for budgeting.
Just didn't know whether you needed more money to make that happen, because it's a large number.
It is. And certainly with the results of that study could lead to future CIP projects, grant opportunities for improvements, things of that nature, which is definitely FY23. So, and then what we currently have on the radar for them, we've kind of initiated some of the conversation, don't have any formal proposals yet from them. We are currently looking at the Arthur Horn Park in the city of Beaufort jurisdiction to rehab a current county park that's just been sort of left in shambles since Hurricane Matthew. What we've become aware of is there's continuous flooding coming from this property. So we're looking at applying for a 319 grant on behalf of the city of Beaufort to move forward with making a water quality, water quantity, and a community park out of this property. So retrofitting the existing wetland into something that's actually going to provide a benefit and alleviate some of the issues. We're looking forward to it. The grant application opens in February of next year and closes in March. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, but based on conversations I've had with our watershed manager, as well as the participating municipalities and the property owner that we've been working with, we think it's going to be a great project and really help in that community. We also have them giving us a recommendation on how to proceed with the Battery Creek Pond that is on the Gray's property, just across from the Walmart TJ Maxx shopping area. And I'll have a more comprehensive update under new business on that. But again, we're working with them to try and get a recommendation on how to improve that infrastructure. We've also engaged them in conversations for a St. Helena drainage study. This will be comprehensive of the whole island, but will be sort of a rain on grid model to show where we have some existing issues and how we can prevent any developments from coming in and exacerbating issues in the future. So to have a real good baseline quality model of what that watershed looks like. So again, I would anticipate that being somewhere just slightly less than what the Northern Ladies Island plan cost would be. And last but not least, the annual report to DHEC. We have changed our deadline to present that report until April of 2022. And so if it's something that can be taken off of my shoulders for them to just do for me, it's on the table for consideration.
Scopes on the county, I know it's a contentious subject, but I know Matt was supposed to do a ride around on the Alljoy area. I didn't see anything in the minutes about Alljoy happening. Are we going to put that on the scope for the future? Do we think that we need to kick it to somebody else in the county?
We are.
I mean, I know it's a contentious, and we talked about it a little bit at the last meeting after the public meeting.
I took a ride out there 2 weeks ago, and I caught the state DOT out there doing some work, clearing some roadkill. But they also were digging out some ditches in the sore spots, if I may. They did quite a bit of work, but it butted up to areas that were our responsibility that haven't been done yet, but probably need to be planned on and coordinated. But I did notice DOT did quite a bit of work out there at the boat ramp area of Alljoy.
Sure.
So.
to make a comment on the coordination, we do work, Elizabeth, with the DOT as well as Tyler Ward. We've initiated monthly meetings for this exact purpose. So if they are planning on being in the Aljoy area, if we're made aware, we can also come in before them or after them to clean up our portions. That was not something that came up in our coordination meeting.
Yeah, I just noticed they were out there. They had heavy equipment. They were digging out ditches. They were fixing the state maintained area that they were responsible for. But again, I digress that our areas just need to be coordinated to finish what they started on our responsible areas. But it's just, I guess they need to let you know they've done that.
Sure. Yep. So Aljoy is still on our radar
Okay, when you say county radar and it's not there, I just,
for Wolpert.
okay,
Not at this
just for the
time.
consultants.
Yes. So in these conversations we've been having with South Carolina Emergency Management Division, they have encouraged us to apply for the hazard mitigation grant. And what that grant will allow us to do is to have a study done of assess what's going on in the area. And then the second phase of that grant is to get the engineering, design, and construction out of it.
If it's possible.
If it's possible.
If it's possible.
Right. So we are looking at obtaining that grant for getting the study
I
done.
think that would be well received.
Yes, yes. Again, we've got quite a few grants going on. The window for opening was September 30th. And some of these have I want to say a soft close, but a deadline of either November 3rd or November 19th. Certainly you can continue to supply information after that time frame, but you lose points when you're not completing the grant application on time. So it's something that we're very aware of. October has been
Busy.
and will be a very busy month for members of our staff. So.
And Julianna's working on that, those grants? Okay.
Yes. Yes. For regional coordination, a little bit lighter now. We do still continue to work with the USCB lab staff on obtaining our monitoring information from the Mossy Oaks drainage improvements. We don't have any updates at this time for the May River watershed. One thing I'd also like to point out is the county has signed IGAs with the town of Yemassee as well as the city of Beaufort for professional services. And so one of the things that we'll be working in coordination with city of Beaufort staff on is a drainage study for the point. So that we'll be having a stakeholder meeting next week and learn more about what the project is and how we will participate. But we'll be
A couple of grants, we're going after as well. Improve resiliency related to a couple of our pump stations. Adding some backflow prevention devices and getting more robust debris screens to protect the pumps and make them more effective during storms. Other than that, there's nothing really major going on. We're relieved to have a better time frame to put the annual reports together, though. That shift to April was important for all of us. So we're not cramming everything in. We have the time to get it done.
Yeah, because we
Right.
would be working on it right now if we were
That's
on
right.
the old.
Everybody pushing for the end of the year all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're one of the only locations in the state, our MS4s, that were reporting on a different cycle than all the others. So we met with DHEC to get approval on amending what our schedule looked like. And then we all three decided that before the end of April 2022, and then the subsequent years, the end of April, we'd provide our annual report for the calendar year.
Good.
So we told them that's what we were doing, haven't heard back, so that's
Like a
how we're
dark
gonna
hole,
operate.
everything you send to the state seems to just sit there with no feedback at all on anything, unfortunately.
We've done our due diligence and that's what's important. For our MS4 reporting, we continue to stay very busy despite what's going on in the world with applications for single-family and commercial projects. Last month, I think we issued 50 new permits. So the county continues to remain active, not only from an inspection point of view, but also a plan review and permitting point of view as well. So again, we stay very busy, our staff. InterGov software, public education. Ellen couldn't be here today, but she has provided her report in the packet. One note I'll say, this past weekend, we participated in the Frogmore 5K as an educational event and open house at the Executive Airport on Ladies Island. And despite the time and the weather, we had a fairly decent turnout, not only for us to talk about our stormwater program, but also the education program as well that we have with Ellen. So we were both there, had a great time. And then later this month, we do have the pond conference scheduled for October 26th and October 27th. We'll talk about that during the next meeting, how successful it was. But I know the MS4s are all working on a presentation together for roles and responsibilities of municipal governments in their respective jurisdictions as it relates to ponds and other types of maintenance. And then myself, as well as Michael Klink, our consultant for the Evergreen project, will be presenting an update on that project as well. That'll be on the 27th. So, and then for our staff update, we are very excited to have Miss Julianna Zorin on board. She started September 20th with us last month, and she has been not only a delight to have on board with the rest of our staff, but she's been very diligent and highly motivated, and she's taking on this role like a champion. So we're very excited to have her. Certainly happy for Matt's group that they have such a great person on their team. So.
I'll just say from the utility, welcome, and we're glad you're on board.
Thank you. We are still advertising for the manager, admin assistant, but at this time, no successful candidates. So with that, I'll give it to Ms. Howard.
I don't have too much to report, except we're having some good task force meetings, and we had a good public meeting. And there was another public meeting in Aljoy, but I think the one we had in Shell Point went really well. I forgot the date of that one.
That was August.
It was in August, but I wasn't at every meeting in August, so it went well. And the stormwater staff did a great job presenting in the contractor. So, I don't know if Jim wants to add anything to that or not.
I don't have anything.
As far as the county, I haven't heard anything on the status of the military stormwater issue at all. It's kind of been quiet about that.
I would just
at
ask,
the county level, I don't know if anything going on with that.
just a question for Katie or Neil. We're not charged for any time allocated against this by the attorneys, the county attorney's staffs in pursuing this, are we? A question, rhetorical.
So to answer your question, Chairman, we're not charged anything for internal legal staff that's working on it.
Okay.
But we have contracted with an outside legal firm, Gentry Lock, and they are on contract with us. They only charge for services that are rendered. So up until this point, there has been really no services rendered. There may be some little bit of legal review and document review up to this point. And a couple meetings they've set up, obviously we'll pay them for that. But from a formal kind of a litigation standpoint, there's no charges because there has been none.
That's the good news.
There's no
Thank you.
retainership fee?
There was no retainership. We did it, I believe it was as our basis and as they spent time working for Beaufort County. And so obviously, whatever time they've spent so far, we will pay them for as needed as they invoice us.
I mean, this has been a political football for so long without hardly any movement and a lot of, I guess, some people on the utility and within Beaufort County government that we shouldn't pursue this because of the other issues that financially are prudent to the county and the municipalities.
Sure. And
going forward with this.
It's also a complex issue as in our current ordinance, we are required to pursue delinquent fees. And so we are now looking to see how if we need to amend or to modify that ordinance so that way we are not being in violation of our own ordinance.
So that would something come out of county council?
Well, basically, at this point, I'm waiting on legal review for us to get some direction.
Okay.
I also want to meet with the county administrator and upper management to kind of go over what the next steps are. And then if there is an ordinance change, we will bring it to county council for 3 readings and for
That
adoption.
makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. It's, we have received letters from from 2 municipalities asking us to not to pursue it, and that's great, but there's also the ordinance component that we got to make sure we got to amend so that we are not in self-violation.
Gotcha. Makes sense, thank you.
Yep.
That's all I had.
Thank you. Moving on to unfinished business, infrastructure maintenance timeline.
Come back up. So in the last meeting, we sort of talked about what our infrastructure maintenance timeline looks like. Right now, we're quite a few years between routine maintenance of county-owned infrastructure, and what the internal county staff are doing now is looking at a prioritization list of projects so that we can be more of a proactive organization versus reacting to problems. This is also part of what Wolpert is doing as for our infrastructure team and capital improvement projects, helping us prioritize where we should be so we're the most effective with the staff that we have available. And then, like I mentioned previously, we have engaged in conversations just pretty preliminarily to determine if we need to contract out some of our more emergency situations to a company versus having us try and handle routine maintenance, preventative maintenance, and emergency situations in-house. So again, just very preliminary discussions, but if we can have something moving forward for FY23, the budget process has started as of last week. So we want to make sure we're staying on top of what we can to ensure we can fund it for next year. So it is still we are still working on it continuously, improving what that timeline and turnaround looks like for our routine maintenance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can stay at the podium if you wish, and we can move to
Yes.
new business.
New business, we have quite a few updates that, 2 of which will require votes. The first one being the SoLoCo manual updates. Every time we want to make amendments to our manual, we do have to have it approved by the utility board, our public facilities committee, and then county council for 3 readings. So we are looking to make these amendments go live as of January 1st of 2022. If you can pull those up, should just be the next slide. Again, really very minimal updates, but because we can't do this just as a policy acceptance at the board level, we do need you all to vote. And so I wanted to make you aware of some of the changes, well, all of the real changes that we've made. Some of these we knew we would need to change at the end of this year based on what our guidance was when the manual went live last year. Some of these have come up through different experiences we've had and ways to strengthen our program. The first of which you can see here, we do have situations where we have loggers come in and clear cut a property for potential development, but we don't require proof of a silviculture permit, which kind of weakens our enforcement on that. So with these silviculture activities, we do require that you prove that you have a silviculture permit to be doing what you're doing within the county. Otherwise, you would fall under the traditional sediment and erosion control requirements.
Do you have the existing previous policy to this, and this is the new one we're looking at now?
So what you see on the screen is
The
the
proposed,
existing policy,
Okay.
and then the changes
proposal
we're
in
looking
red.
at making.
the proposal's in red, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Sections, I think on the next screen, where we've deleted things, it just has them crossed out. And if we had added language after that, it would have been highlighted in red. So, can you go back? Thank you. Chapter 2, when the SoLoCo manual first came out, we had better site design as an option to get people familiar and ready with that concept come January 1, 2022. And during this last year, we've held meetings with our community development leadership to ensure that the principles of better site design were not in conflict with the community development code standards. And what we found is that our standards were very similar, if not exact, but they really didn't have a mechanism of enforcing some of those rules. And with us in Stormwater now requiring the principles that they require or should be requiring in their community development code, we just have a more united front when we have these big proposed developments coming in.
So it's no longer a recommendation.
No, it is no longer highly recommended, it is required.
Exactly.
Part of the better site design principles is they've got a 6-step process. And because the process for the preliminary plan, if you go to the next slide, you can see it there all scratched out. That process is almost exactly similar to what a concept plan is. And so we determined that that wouldn't be a necessary portion of the review process because it's all pretty much captured in the site prospecting, the pre-application, and then the concept plan. So we're removing that language just to keep it simplified for not only the development community, but also our staff. But removing that language does not weaken anything in our requirements in any way.
has all of these proposed changes been at least overlooked by legal for legality purposes?
They will be, but after you guys decide. Yeah. There's a legal review part of this as well. We can't.
I would prefer before voting on it that legal looked at it to say, yes, we're within our rights to vote on it and then not put the horse before the carriage.
Well, I think in this case, if we think that these changes are acceptable from our viewpoint, then we can go forward.
And then it goes to
If we
legal.
were to say
Okay.
no, then it wouldn't get to legal at all. So
Right.
I'm just going to say from my position, we can all agree without taking a vote that we can continue with this, and then, legal has the final say.
Okay.
From our standpoint, from a technical basis, not a legal basis, we can agree or disagree.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. And how our ordinance is written is we cannot make any changes to the manual without it coming through. Again, your approval, committee approval and county council approval. Some places, they've kind of written themselves out. I think traditionally, when we've updated our previous manual, we just didn't tell anyone.
I think if you look at the language, excuse me, if you look at the language in this preliminary plan, there's a lot of mays in there. And it's good, I think it's being stricken because there's no shalls or musts in there. There's a lot of mays that it's probably good that it's not there.
Leaves too many variances, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So again, I don't think by removing this language, we're restricting.
We're better off. We're better off without that language.
Yes, yes. And then during these stakeholder meetings with Natural Resources Committee, we wanted to, there's a very comprehensive list they have for things they want to see on a natural resources inventory. But our community development code isn't nearly as that restrictive. And so we kind of went through as a group to determine what could be removed from the natural resource inventory requirements and what needed to stay. So this slide, as well as the next slide, is the result of having those conversations with community development. So we're all still in agreement on that. The consultation meeting, again, this is handled, the consultation meeting really we handle at the preliminary, the pre-application and concept plan. This is just an additional requirement that staff feels is not necessary for the implementation of our standards. So we'll need to renumber that, but that's a formatting thing. We've also added language for our compliance calculator in our Appendix D as well as Chapter 2. There's a list of everything required to be present at final and conceptual plan level. And oddly enough, the compliance calculator that they're required to use was not required to present at final approval. So we've added that language in. They need to show their compliance calculations as part of the final approval process. And then out of that Wolpert scope we did regarding gravel and impervious area, we did have to make an update to our pervious surfaces so that our manual did not conflict in any way with how we treat things. And that was something that was contradictory in our manual that we need to update. The reason those items are blue is because both Julianna and I were editing the document, just as a FYI. I think
She had blue, you had red for track changes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's been in the state records for a long time that compacted dirt was considered a hard surface. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how that managed to stay like that for this long a time, but.
Yeah. Yes. So we've updated that to make sure it's consistent throughout our permitting process. And other items we made, just simple formatting errors. The number sequencing in Chapter 4 was a little wonky. So we were able to fix that, and then adding in the proposed contours at conceptual review in Appendix D as well. So
you would like us to make a motion?
Well, just real quick, were all these changes decided internally? Did y'all consult with any developers or consultants on the changes?
these changes we developed internally. I don't feel that what we're proposing is,
That major of change that was gonna drastically affect developers?
I would ask, on the converse of that, the municipalities that we're hoping that will sign on to this SoLoCo, have they agreed with, have you sent this out to them and they got their agreement? Like the town of Bluffton, that I think I read they finally agreed to the SoLoCo, or did I misread that?
they did agree for adoption. I can't recall if they were going live in October 1st. I know that was in the
My question is, would they have to go through a similar exercise that we're just going through? If we adopt this, do we send this, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out a point of order here. How it works to get everybody's approval in this.
Again, I don't think the changes we're making really affect the overall goal of the SoLoCo manual. The town of Bluffton just voted on their manual, and they certainly won't be making any amendments. At least that's their hope. But yes, this information will be provided to the other jurisdictions that are using and planning on using this.
Hopefully.
But again, as the first person to really implement, this is where we're at. So.
I would just say for the record, if there's any substantive changes going forward that we, as you mentioned, instead of legal, having the municipalities weigh in before we get it.
Yeah, we do keep in coordination with, again, mostly the town of Bluffton, because they're the most proactive about implementing these standards. Staying in coordination with them on updates.
I'm just looking for the future, you know,
Sure. Well,
if
and
there's a substantive change.
sure, I don't disagree with you. I don't, for what they adopted, I'm not sure what their manual currently looks like. So again, there are probably some nuances of difference, but overall, the intention of the manual and the enforcement of the manual is the same.
Gotcha. Thank you. Are you ready for us to vote?
Yeah. It's been a while since we've had a voting item.
I don't know, are we? I'd like to get it in my head a little bit better about the conceptual plan versus a preliminary plan. And those are for giving them authority to do a project before the hydraulic analysis or anything else that goes into identifying what the overall runoffs could be, or incrementalization, or any of that. So I'd like to know, you know, because we've been getting a lot of that, where development after development is all put into the same area, county drainage that goes into the river system, and I don't know that it's being looked at for incrementalization as far as compounding the runoff. And that's one of the issues we were looking at in the Shell Point area.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example of where you're seeing that happening?
Okay, for instance, I don't know what's going on. I was going to ask this question of Alice or anybody. After we've had these fairly heavy rains here the last month, I've been riding through the area looking for this flooding issues. And the other day when I was riding through the Shell Point Park area, I noticed that there was a lot of clearing going on to the lateral sides of the county stormwater ditch that drains from the ponds. And I didn't know of any projects that were ongoing in that area at that time. And so that's what I mean by incrementalization. These things slide in, and then all of a sudden, because all that feeds the same area that has the discharge problem.
Right.
And that's what I'm wondering if this is being taken into account on a preliminary basis so that it could be stopped if it's going to have adverse conditions. But once everything's been agreed to and it goes to the planning stage where for the final you have your hydraulic analysis and everything else going into it, it's already been authorized at that point. Mm-hmm. And I think there needs to be a kind of an interrupt in there, or it being the sequence and changed a little bit so we have a better idea what's going into a project.
The sequence has changed, so a lot more of that upfront analysis as part of better site design does have to happen. Prior to getting to the final stage, we really want to see a more holistic picture, and you have to determine, based on the location of your project, what your impacts are going to be, and if it's feasible to even do the work based on a lot of that preliminary evaluations of your site. Certainly, on that same note, we can't expect a developer to come in and spend $50,000 on a project just for them to figure out it's not gonna work, and then they've expended all that money. And so it is finding a balance about that. Understandably, my concern is not the developer's cost, but it does have to be something we consider in the requirements and our standards. What the better site design principles will do now that they're required is a lot more of that upfront analysis does have to be done prior. I will say, as far as compounding issues with development, within the county's jurisdiction, I am not aware of properties in series where we're just continuously developing. The site you mentioned, I believe, is in the town of Port Royal's jurisdiction.
That's what we're getting to, is because they're permitting things that are compounding problems for the county. And that's part of the issue.
Sure. I will say for that property you referenced, the developer and the engineer on that site reached out fairly early on to try and get some of the early information about the drainage study from Cranston so that they could be sensitive to the results of that versus what they're trying to do on site. Ultimately, it is up to the town of Port Royal to review and approve. But based on conversations with Van, by reference, they have adopted these principles as well because they reference the county's manual.
Hence our
Might have been a bit of
concern to the
confusion.
neighborhood.
Sure, totally understandable.
There might have been a bit of confusion on what the concept, preliminary, final plans are, because those are stages of a permit application review process. And to peel out that one preliminary phase, which is a kind of just how you want to break down the process, because it's a continuous process from a concept to a final permitted set of plans. And taking out the preliminary, just you're asking for more in the concept, right? So an engineer or developer does not need to go to all that effort doing detailed plans where they may have missed some fundamentals, but nothing would be turning dirt on the ground based on whether there was a concept or a preliminary phase to the application process.
In fact,
Still all has to be permitted before the dirt can get turned anyway. So I think that's,
And in better site design, like you mentioned, there are more requirements up front. There is a site assessment and a site feasibility study that now has to happen prior, whereas right now, realistically, all they have to do is come in with a conceptual plan. Now they have to do a site assessment, a feasibility study, as well as a pre-application. And we have had quite a few developers come in and have a pre-application meeting so that they fully understand what is going to be required of them. Again, at this phase, where we're at now, that's not required. But where we're going to, it is going to be a requirement of the permit process. If that helps you.
It makes the muddy waters a little bit more opaque.
Certainly.
Yes. Okay, for instance, I've seen one project where on the concept that they're talking about putting in all these BMPs, but the BMPs wouldn't work for that area. But they're just talking this pie in the sky type of stuff. Oh, we're gonna do this, that, and the other thing. But and the concept is, it sounds great, but it won't work. And that type of thing really needs to be looked at before they compound the problems later on in the permitting phase.
Well, and if the BMPs on site, as our process is now, don't work, the project, even at the final stage, cannot go through. And if the applicant has to amend their BMP plan, they also have to resubmit to the state with those changes in mind. We do have a project now where they have just made a small amendment, but it kicks back the permitting process to DHEC because it needs to be reevaluated fully before coming back to final with their hydrology calculations. And for this project in particular, they did provide the hydrology calculations prior, and it did work for what they proposed, and they're actually wanting to increase capacity of storage. But again, any changes and amendments to the BMPs have to be reapproved, not only with the staff, but the state. Staff being the SRT group, not just Stormwater.
I know we're a little out of Robert's Rules of Sequence here for comments on a motion that hasn't been made yet.
Motion to,
Well, I thought we were getting ready to vote on something we didn't have all the information for.
Well, first I want a motion to approve, and then we'll open it back up for more comment, right? Can I get a motion to approve the manual, the SoLoCo manual updates and minor changes?
motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
Okay, any other comments or concerns?
No, I'm gonna let it ride. I hope that it will work out in the future for projects that aren't gonna be small and avoid the hydrology requirement, but keep adding incrementally into the overall drainage problem.
To the maximum extent practicable, this manual does that. And our previous manuals have done that as well.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor of accepting it?
Okay.
All right.
Opposed? Motion passes.
So this will be on the agenda for public facilities in early November.
Okay.
If you would like to participate in that meeting.
Date of that meeting?
I'm sorry?
The date for that meeting?
Only meet Monday, but it's too soon for that.
November 4th.
That would be the next. The second.
Public facilities meeting November 4th?
Whichever one comes first, public facilities or natural resources, because we want to make sure we're in line with all of our
Both of them.
I would
subsequent.
say November 8th.
But natural resources will be before that.
Technically, we're public facilities. So, well, November 8th,
Okay. Thank you.
the Monday before our potential next meeting. But we'll see. That's
That's
up
it.
to-
After the next three items, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Moving right along.
Moving along to the Academy Park BNP acceptance. Perfect. So back in 2017, this is the pond that has been on the agenda for some time, the Academy Park easement updates that we provide. At this time, with the property owner, we'll just close that out. Okay. With the property owner, we are looking to move forward with the county council approving the purchase of this property for $1. In order to get council's final approval, we do have to bring it back to the board. The intention, this is the regional BMP pond that was built in coordination with Academy Estates off of Faculty Drive and Alumni and Ladies Island. We have, what this pond did, if you can scroll down just a little bit more, to kind of reference what's included here is the original agreement, the extension of agreement, and then the plans for what that pond was to look like. This was the original agreement signed by Josh Gruber. If you keep going down, I think 2 more pages. There's the extension request from Ms. Jacobs, and with the extension request, all the parameters for the development agreement did fall in line. This is the design. We have a drainage system that enters into this regional BMP, has pretreatment, and then eventually connects back into that same ditch where it outfalls. I believe that's Jenkins Creek. Maybe that, Neil?
So, Rock Springs.
Rock Springs.
Rock Springs.
No. This one isn't Rock Springs. Sorry.
It's
This is
further
the
up.
one that's
It's the
between-
same watershed from Rock Springs, just further up.
It's further down. This discharges between,
Oh, yeah, further down. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
to the side, upward, yeah.
Fox Creek is up and this is further down.
Yeah. So
This
it's going
is
this
the-
way and it's down.
the water that's between Ladies Island and kind of the Walmart.
Yeah, the airports.
What, I thought it was
Warsaw
Jenkins, I
Flat, or-
apologize. Yeah. that's where it eventually outfalls. So this pond gives some pre-treatment before that discharges out into that creek. I think it's less than 500 feet. At this point, to enter into the purchase agreement, we have to have approval from the board to continue with what is the intention of this project, was to be a regional BMP for acceptance into the county's system.
And it's labeled as Academy Park.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the,
Is there any issues that the county has with the way the pond is dug, or is it's gonna cause any major additional work?
No.
That was out of the original agreement?
No.
Then I don't see a problem.
you don't see one? You're probably most familiar with it. Anybody
I've
here?
had a few meetings about it.
You got no objections?
No.
All right. Do I have a motion to accept the site development plan for Academy Park BMP?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
Okay, moving right along to the Battery Creek 319 pond. Unfortunately, Mr. Andrews couldn't be here today, but he did request that I bring this location to the board's attention. What we have found, or what we have found, is that there's a lot of this drainage system that is, you have a lot of trash, a lot of water, a lot of debris coming to this location. And based on how the pond has been constructed, it appears after our field visit that there's a lot of water bypassing the forebay and allowing the overtopping of the emergency spillway versus outfalling to that Battery Creek 319 pond. So one more slide. Perfect. So that's the outfall structure that's supposed to lead to the pond, and then you have your emergency spillway there. And so a lot of water, which carries all the debris and trash, is bypassing the pond system and still making its way out into Battery Creek. So what we are working on with Wolbert is to get a recommendation on how to retrofit this system so that it's functioning as designed.
I have, Mr. Andrews sent me some comments to read into the record, and
Sure.
he wanted to know whether the stormwater could find a way to capture and collect litter and trash washing into regional BMPs altogether, not just for this, I think, one up, but how do we look, universally throughout all the outfalls to prevent or find out where this trash is coming from. Somehow track and trace, if you would.
I was able to engage in a conversation with our solid waste and recycling program, as well as the DOT, to find out what sort of efforts are made for this particular instance, but for the other ponds in
Regionally,
the
yeah.
area. Yes. And this pond in particular, in the vicinity, there are Adopt a Highway programs. There are two different groups that come in just to this specific area and do cleanups. And a lot of where this trash and effluent is coming from is the developed location for the Walmart area. Walmart, Planet Fitness, TJ Maxx, all that stuff comes straight through. Certainly it's a comprehensive problem, not only for the stormwater department, but also other departments within our organization. Solid waste and recycling is one of them, doing education efforts in these areas to talk about where this debris ultimately ends up. I think that the pond is, well, if it were designed properly, the pond is functioning in that all of this debris you want to have accumulate in the forebay for clean out, so that none of that makes its way into the natural system. This area does experience high volumes of debris and litter, And the county is on a routine maintenance schedule for this particular site. Knowing that information for cleanouts, again, we want to be good stewards, not only of the environment, but also this property in particular, which has been donated to the city and county to have on site. And even our efforts quarterly aren't enough to really keep up. So we're trying to reevaluate what that cycle needs to be. And so that's one of the goals of this recommendation we're looking for from Wolpert on, is how do we keep that debris where it's supposed to be?
That will be an interesting report to see what they come up
Yeah,
with.
what exactly, I might have missed the beginning. What did you say the reason it's not working correctly? Is it just too much?
Well, it is a lot of debris, it's also a lot of water, but if you can kind of see, there's a low flow orifice for the outfall structure, but then the emergency spillway is lower than the trash rack for the outfall structure. So a lot of that volume is just going right over the spillway, which is just a natural system that goes out to Battery Creek. So it's bypassing entirely the stormwater pond that was built to intercept all of this.
Never have your emergency spillway set lower than your primary spillway,
Right.
because then it's not the primary spillway.
So we investigated along the side of
Also,
where the spillway discharges, but again, into the stormwater pond, and there's very minimal debris in the pond, but there is accumulation of debris in the ditch line going out to Battery Creek. There are 5 inlets to this four-way from the roadway, as well as the development across the street. So there's a lot of inputs into this very small four-bay.
And that's right at the intersection, right there, and that's right there on that.
You can, if you're looking hard enough, you can actually see the outfall structure and the.
Yeah, I've seen it. I know exactly where it
Yeah.
is, yeah.
And then the pond it's piped probably
Through the
another
water.
100 yards, and the pond is beyond.
Back behind the berm, that large berm along the roadways there.
And then you can see the pond slightly, well, you can kind of see the pond from Old Jericho Road. So what we're looking at for them is, was this truly built as designed? And if not, what upgrades can we make to make sure that it's functioning in that manner?
Andrews didn't do the measurements on it to see if it's still fitting into the design standards for the overall drainage area.
Andrews suggested it be done, but they did not volunteer to do it. So
They weren't the designer on the project.
they were not, no. So just to.
you're not looking for any action from us, it's just an FYI.
No, just to make you aware that this is something, the effectiveness of our BMPs is important. And so we're seeing sort of a deficiency with this one, and we're looking at ways to address that deficiency.
I think this also dovetails with Ellen's educational endeavors. Being a coordinator of Adopt a Highway group, I can tell you that it's a never-ending battle. And the only way that I see us ever in the low country to have some kind of, and I know that there's various parties that believe roadside pickup for 100% of the county will eliminate this, and I don't think so. I think it's education. And I think that what you see going on in America is we have to get to our boards of education and our schools to allow, right, these Ellen Kimonos and the state Adopt a Highway coordinators to go into the schools and make free presentations to students. If we don't get it to the students, the young people, of anti-litter, it's never going to stop. That's just my soapbox.
Sure. That is one of the things that Ellen brings to kids' attention when she has what we call an EnviroScape, which is a model of a coastal watershed. And one of the pollutants that we have on this board before a rainstorm is litter. And so the kids really enjoyed, I know this weekend, watching how all of the pollutants on land during their simulated rainstorm made their way out into the creeks. And so we had a very engaged group of children that were keenly aware of what issues we have even just at the local level. So
Start.
I was very encouraged by the Smarties that we had with us. So just to bring it to your attention, this is something that we're working on. And then the other item, just to make an update for, you may or may not have seen this in the newspaper or seen it posted elsewhere, is that there was an illicit discharge of the sanitary sewer system off of Highway 278.
Right in front of the Graves project.
Yes, the contractor on the right-of-way portion of the project hit a sewer force main. That Beaufort Jasper Sewer and Water anticipated being approximately 250,000 gallons coming out of that system. Fortunately, none of the effluent made its way into the Ocoee River. They bermed everything up and worked through the night to get that system contained, limed, ready to go. I did speak with my DHEC contact here, and he was on site all morning. Certainly these things don't come to my attention until after 4 o'clock on a Friday, which is a really great way to be of help. But we did have inspectors on site Monday morning, and the system was clear of debris and everything had been removed and taken off site. So that issue has been resolved. I just wanted to bring it to your attention should you have had questions on what occurred and how it was handled.
I drove by it many times and saw all the different jurisdictions present.
Yes, it's my understanding they worked till close to 5 in the morning Saturday, containing that site. But one of the positives of that is, if there is positive, is that our communication network between the sewer company as well as the jurisdictions is effective in getting that information relayed to us.
Yeah, Beaufort Jasper Water had many, many individuals there working.
Was it mismarked or you don't know?
I don't know.
I'm just curious.
Probably trying to get something done on a Friday so they could enjoy the weekend and hit a sewer force main. So that is the update for the board on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We do have a couple of administrative things under new business that we need to discuss before we leave new business. And one is our calendar for our next meeting. It's unfortunate that several members aren't here because I would really love their input. Originally, our every month schedule would have us meeting in December. Past practices have met in November because we used to meet every month, so it wasn't an issue. And we created the calendar for the next year's meetings in November. I don't believe that that's a cast in stone that we have to do it in November for 2022, that we could do it in December. If we met in November, meaning 1 month from now, I'm not sure we'd have that much information to disseminate as opposed to putting it off till December, early December, as a matter of fact, so we can then create the calendar for 2022 and have more information in December for Katie's group to disseminate to us rather than have just the next 30 days worth of information. Again, it gives a little more breathing room for Katie's group and Katie to get it, more comprehensive reports to us by meeting in December. I'd like everybody on the board's input on this.
There's a couple issues on that December meeting. I think that they've been trying to avoid that because of holiday schedules and all like that in the past. But what I was going to ask was, what is the critical month for meeting? Is that the budget passing time period? Is that February?
Yes.
In which case, if we're doing bi-monthly, then we could back up from there. That would beat with a December timeframe. If it's January, then we're going to want to do it in November.
Typically, we don't meet in January because the month of December is fairly light. We always have it on the calendar previously because we just met once a month, but there were several instances where, because there just really wasn't much to update on, we didn't go through with meeting. February is important because of the budget. I do know that budget season started last week, and so they are looking to get started a little bit earlier as far as the deadlines. So I would need to follow up on when they're wanting to vote on our budget so that I could relay that information to you all, because you all have the first layer of approval for us, which has historically been done in February and in March.
In that case, then working with the December schedule instead of
Exactly.
November would be beneficial. But that's what I was getting at. That's the crucial time period. We need to work within that framework.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like December, February is what makes sense, correct?
Does to me, but I
And it really-
want everybody that's here, that those that aren't here will just have to live with our decision. But,
Neil, do you remember if the November meeting was a hard and fast deadline for boards and commissions? Like, we have to vote on our meeting schedule? Yeah.
because it's an administrative, if it needs to be approved, all right? Again, we can look at it right now in discussion. If we're going to continue in 2022 with every other month, all right? It's not going to be hard to come up with the Wednesdays
Yeah,
every other week or twice a month on Wednesdays into 2022. And it isn't hard to look at the calendar and figure out the
Yeah.
holiday schedule.
it's not gonna affect if I say yes or no right now anyway. I mean, I don't know exactly.
Exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So if in fact, I would like to make a motion that we move our next meeting to December and stay in 2022 as an every other month
Starting in February.
schedule,
Starting in February.
starting in February.
I second that.
I'll second that.
You okay?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I don't have to discuss this anymore. What I would say.
So we have just now voted on our.
Yes, we have.
Well, I guess we said it, we didn't give you input. so
What I
is that-
what I would say is that
That
it,
needs to be in the minutes. Okay.
if in fact you find out through your superiors that it must be done in November because of some
Yeah, but don't-
obscure requirement, then we will do it administratively and you can, I would ask you to send it out and we will vote electronically back to you whether that meeting schedule that you come up with is acceptable.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
it does.
Does that like to make sense?
Worst case, it could always just be a quick Zoom meeting. We
Yeah.
call a special meeting just to
If
vote
you
specifically
can't
on
do
the
it
schedule.
electronically, then a Zoom if you have to.
Sure.
Yeah, so let's find out the logistics, because I don't know how the phone calls will, if that suffices, so it might be, as Katie said, just a quick 5-minute Zoom meeting and we vote for.
If we have to, yes.
Let us find out the rules and regulations
Yep,
and we'll
that-
obviously
that's fine.
communicate back to you guys.
I mean, it's twofold, whether we have to do it in November, number one, and then if we have to, then how we get it done is expeditiously.
Why don't we do a tentative meeting via Zoom for November, anticipating that possible issue?
I mean, all I have to do is walk down that hallway and ask. So
You
if
want
they-
to let's give her 2 minutes to do that. Can you do that?
Oh, or can everyone hang out afterwards? I can run down there, cause it may be 2 minutes, but then people may be busy and I don't wanna leave the board just sitting here.
We can wait 2 minutes.
We can wait 2 minutes.
We'll wait 2 minutes.
I will go try and figure that out.
I just think it's kind of ludicrous to make mountains out of molehills on when you make the calendar.
I think that in the past, at least a couple, 2 or 3 years ago, remember there were some critical issues that had to be done at that time for MS4 information and all like that.
That's
That had to
maybe
be
why
in
we
at that
did it.
time. But that was,
And if those
For certain.
happen during the year, then you administratively change the schedule. If during the year we know in March that we need to do something in June, then you,
personally, I think that we could have our business meetings and then we could have special meetings in between for educational things, research projects that are being proposed or were finalized or talking things.
about that in December.
Yeah, if she could just preliminary put that on the books for November. If it gets canceled, it gets canceled. If we don't need to be here, let's put it together on the books.
Well, right now it's on the books, but I think that part of that planning is for the television.
Exactly.
Because they're all on,
They have to plan for
they're
it.
all on TV, the county channel.
So
So
we're
that
gonna
might
make
be
it
something they
public.
have to have planned out a longer period of time.
That's our public notice when it's on the channel.
I mean, it's always been, the second, and our meeting has always been on the second Wednesday, and I'm not even sure, I think that's in some document. That it's,
It's probably in the ordinance or something like
that we
that.
meet on the second Wednesday of the month. So the dates of the months, we don't have any control over anything.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
it's not a big deal,
No.
whether you just pick a different months. You know, if you go February, April, June, August, we're back to this schedule.
We're 2 minute.
We're in a 2-minute
2-minute break.
break.
Yep.
It's got that air.
Oh, yeah. We're in a 2 minute break for a second. We're not in
Utility board to meet in November to vote on their schedule. So
Wonderful.
moving the meeting as motion to December
December
14th.
We just saved,
15th.
we just saved you some more work.
Sure, yes.
It's December 15th.
Hopefully I'll have an admin by then,
There we go.
so.
December 15th, I don't know if that mathematically works out.
So December 15th is the date?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the second Wednesday.
Second Wednesday.
That's the actual third
I
Wednesday.
don't know if that
that the
mathematically
third?
works out.
The
It's 15th. That's 2 weeks plus a day. That can't be
Yeah,
the
that's the
second
third
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Third.
So it should be the 8th.
I think we've gotten a little out of order this year by moving it to just every other month, but originally it is supposed to be the third Wednesday of the month. So,
So the 15th would work.
I had a point of order. I'd ask for a clarification. Is there anything in our ordinance, and I don't have the ordinance with me, that dictates exactly which Wednesday it has to be?
it's dictated in the ordinance.
It is
For
dictated
the third.
for the 3rd? Well, then.
We've been doing the second for at least 3 years.
Well, I guess because I have a code enforcement badge, or public works
Change it.
enforcement badge, I'm finding myself for being out of compliance with ordinance. So,
So we need to make a motion to correct this issue.
Well, I don't think we can, I don't think we need a motion,
Okay.
right? I think that we can just, for 2022, just move it to the 3rd Wednesday of the month.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
which I'll present that proposed draft schedule at the December 15th. meeting.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our one visitor has left the building, one semi-public person. Is there any other public comment from our other 2 visitors? Mr. Desai, Schauer, any comment?
No, no, sir.
There being no more public comment, can we have a motion to approve the draft agenda for the 3rd week in December?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
Motion to adjourn the meeting?
Well, second. Meeting adjourned. I don't think you turned.